This video is brought to you by BTI Institute, a New Jersey leader in certification-based management training.
This topic came up during our lean coffee last month, as far as, the best way to talk to executives about agility. And Michael James, he's been a speaker for us for a few sessions. He's also teaching at our upcoming CSM CLB class. CSM stands for Certified Scrum Master, and CLB stands for Certified Less Basics. And so this would be a chance for you to get to meet Michael a little bit, informally, if you're interested in taking the class. And so on the website, there's quite a bit of information about Michael. And again, I'm not going to read it. I'll let Michael, pretty much share that himself. But if you remember at any of the live conferences that we've had, I used to have a book, Why Scrum Isn't Working for Your Company. It's a blue book and it's a comic book. And that's something that Michael actually authored, and it's been very handy. I use it today with people that I work with. So with that, I will now turn the meeting over to Michael.
Cool. It's exciting that the comic book is still being useful for people. I've also created a Scrum reference card that people find useful. It's keep updating it, so if you don't have the latest version, you don't have the latest version. Oh yeah, the e-learning, Scrum training series. Maybe those things are already in the bio anyway. The e-learning with quizzes built in that help people get ready for Scrum certification and also debunk some of the myths that come with it. What else did I do that's useful? Oh, that's the Scrum Master checklist, things that Scrum Masters would be concerned with at scrummasterchecklist.org. This is all out there. I don't have any paid content. Everything I put out is free because I want to spread it as far as it can get. For today's talk, I am going to use a couple things that I've used before. So I'm going to have to, at least in the beginning, the first 30% or so. So if you've been to one of my things before, some of it's going to be repetition, or maybe it'll be new because you're looking at it at a different angle. One of the things I want to do is have you talk to each other a little bit about the topic in pairs before I go into my spiel about this. But I would like you to talk to each other about the challenges that you've had discussing or having executives understand what an agile adoption might be, and regarding maybe some of your own lack of clarity about it, or the difficulty in communicating what you've got into their heads, or maybe even getting access to them in the first place. Getting access to the right people is one of the biggest challenges with this. So I'm going to use this randomly assign group feature of Zoom here and create, let's see, how many do we have now? 48. So let's create just randomly 20 breakout rooms. So this will be, you'll be in groups of 2 or 3. And then I'll call you back at the end of, let's just do a 4-minute conversation. So you'll have a talk with a couple other people. Come again?
I think that was background.
And remember to unmute when you go into your conference. So please have a 4-minute conversation with your pair or small group. The topic is your own challenges in dealing with executives and having their understanding of agility. Here we go. It should open the rooms in a few seconds.
Bob, can you make me co-host?
Yeah.
And if this feature works properly, the co-hosts will stay here. All right, start a timer. Start 4-minute timer.
4 minutes, starting now.
And then I'll start the clock for the session. hopefully this will keep us together on time.
Okay.
Usually run out of time. Usually don't get to do everything that we want to do in the sessions, but we'll try.
Looks like 3 people didn't go to groups, or maybe they joined after you started them.
Looks like we have. Well, John got grouped. I guess he wasn't co-host.
Yeah, somehow he lost it, and I
Well,
can't give it back to him until he comes back. So
all right, some people. So there was one room with only one person, so I moved him into room 20.
okay.
All right, so we got groups of 2 and 3. I haven't used this new version of Zoom, so I'm glad they did fix that feature. So I constantly had the problem with create random groups, and then my iPad would join them, or anyone, or if I'm working in Japan, my translator would wind up in one of the rooms.
We've been using Teams, and if you want to like assign people to groups, if you get it wrong, you can't fix it. So you have to kind of start over. Like I had a meeting with like 20 people, and I was trying to split them in half, and I got one name wrong. There was no way to fix it.
Funny, Microsoft Teams, such on the Mac especially, painful to use for these, for the breakout rooms and the stuff, the dynamic stuff that we like to do. All right, timer is still running. And I'm going to close the rooms as soon as I get a beep beep beep. Should have music for these intros. Oh, I have a Zoom or Miro board. I guess I could share this. Copy board link. Oh, here we go. Close all rooms.
Hey, Charlie's there.
And this should magically bring everyone back.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, everyone.
And we're back.
Looks like it's going to take another few seconds.
Bob, can you make me a co-host? I lost that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Please, thank you. So that way I can help you out with the participants.
All right, I think it's brought everyone back now. One of the concepts we'll be discussing in the session is something that I think if an agile adoption is going to really succeed in any kind of permanent way, maybe I should give some more background. In the 20 years since I started working with companies trying to do this, went in very naive in the beginning. and thought, well, once they see a better way of working, they'll just jump on it. And as soon as one team, like one of the things we used to talk about back then was, well, let's do a pilot. So you have one team try this, and of course the pilot is successful, but that's not very persuasive for all people. Come with all kinds of reasons that it doesn't count. Well, they cheated, they did this thing, or it was a group of volunteers, or you just picked the best people. And you almost find that the more successful the pilot is, the more resistance there is to it. Like the more antibodies form against this different way of working. So some of the things that you think would work turn out, at least in my experience, and hard to say exactly why, it turned out to have not worked as well. And many times Scrum adoption or other type of Agile adoption is disappointing, winds up being a temporary change, or more likely we'll get a superficial change. So we'll rename all the project managers to Scrum Masters, but basically, we'll rename our requirements analysts to product owners, and nothing fundamental really changes. And at least part of the reason for that, I think, is that the upper management and the next layers are not on the same page about the intention of the Agile adoption. And I'll say this is partly the fault of the trainers, and the people promoting this, because it's sometimes promoted, usually actually, is promoted as some kind of panacea. All your different problems, doing whatever insert Agile method here, just makes all those problems go away. At least that's how it's sold to people. Too often that's happened. And so when we implement it, we're not clear what we're actually trying to improve in these adoptions. What are we trying to improve? And then the other question is, if we were serious about, if we could realize what our optimization goal is, or our system optimization goal, which I'll get into more later. But once we're clear about what that is, what are we willing to let go of? And a lot of times there's not a serious conversation about that. It says, if we're going to do this, it means there's some of the things that we're attached to. And these are, a lot of times, they're things that people really want, good things, that we might have to de-emphasize or even let go of entirely. And this is not often made adequately clear to our executives and the people who are sponsoring our introduction of these things. One of the principles behind less or large-scale Scrum is that we do need a top-down and bottom-up engagement in the work that we're doing. Top-down plus, so it's not top-down or bottom-up. And a bit of history for those that may not have been doing this as long. It used to be, so back in the days of extreme programming, so in the late 90s, this was coming from the grassroots, the push to do this. Developers, programmers like me were saying, I'm tired of being micromanaged. If you just let us work our own way and work in small teams, and we use these technical practices that are different and focus on the fun stuff, the working code, just get off my back. That was kind of the push in the beginning. And then some of those groups showed some success. And then you had like the Info Week or IEEE, these different journals coming out with success stories. And then the executives got, okay, we need to do this. We need to start doing some of this Agile stuff I keep hearing about. And so then it got pushed from on top without an understanding of what it really was. Neither of those have been effective any times that I know of when they worked alone. I haven't seen it, at least not any kind of permanent, lasting, substantial change has resulted from that. So one of the Agile adoption principles in large-scale Scrum is that we need a top-down and bottom-up engagement in this. And this will start with this concept of a system optimization goal. Now, when I say system here, the system I'm talking about is the relationships between the human beings, relationships between the departments, the ways that they interact with each other, the ways that teams interact with each other, all the dynamics of that. And we'll have to include that system will have to include the policies of the organization and the structure of the organization. And I'll call all that stuff organizational design. Our belief is that all you're gonna do is consume oxygen by talking at people about a culture change or trying to change the mindset, as one of the other things. Be very careful. I mean, it is that it doesn't. Those are not wrong, but starting from that hasn't, at least in my experience. I'm just one person. Hasn't worked that well. As well as making a structural change, because we find that people's behavior, or which is the culture, results in the culture, is a result of the system that they're in, which would include the structure and the policies, and so all that stuff is the organizational design. So yeah, we need to be able to step back and look at it as a, from a kind of like with your third eye, look at it from above, at a distance, look at the big picture. And almost any organization, even one that claims to be doing agile, if you step back far enough, you will see, well, it's actually a waterfall. It's just a waterfall, but we've hidden it some way. So we want to talk to people. We want to reach the people who have an entrepreneurial bent, and an organization they are there somewhere, but you might have to go up a couple levels higher than the people you're dealing with at the moment. But they will eventually, if it's a company that's making money, you'll reach someone who's interested in the company's profitability, the company's ability to and succeed, its longevity in the marketplace, who's looking at it from that perspective. I'm going to now introduce the idea of the startup mentality. Even an established organization, even government organizations, even nonprofit organizations, like is Teach for America a nonprofit?
Yes.
Call it that, yeah. So that'd be an example. There are, even within these behemoths, you will find some aspects of where startup thinking is useful. And it becomes more and more useful. I think most of you are working for commercial companies. It's becoming more and more useful because you see the rate that companies go out of business nowadays. You see them how quickly. No one would have expected, like the events of just this week, 2 weeks ago. Before things change so rapidly, no one would have expected like Airbnb to have a greater market cap than the big established, Hilton, etc. So things are changing more rapidly, and so the startup mentality, at least the ability to think like that, becomes more and more useful. So the thing I'm going to ask you to do next. Sorry, there are a few exercises in this. It's not all just listening to me. Is look at why startups fail. What are the risks that startup endeavors have? And we'll use startup instead of using a narrow definition of like two guys in the garage eating ramen noodles, banging the Apple One computer or Hewlett Packard, or let's take a broader view. Any high-risk endeavor, anything we're doing where there's a great amount of uncertainty whether we'll succeed or not, an attempt to establish a lasting institution, but starting from a space of hypothesis, whether what we're doing is useful or not. We want to find out as quickly as we can what they are. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. Some of the reasons that startups fail. Oh, actually, you know what else I can do? I can share, if any of you have Miro, I can also send a link to this board here. A list of, all right, let's do one thing at a time. Let's stop sharing for a second because the chat disappeared. All right. So if anyone happens to want to look at the board independently, you can do that with this Miro link if you're familiar with Miro. But you don't need to if you don't want to. It's just there for those that would like such a thing. All right. So some of the reasons that, now this was researched, and I'm going to trust you not to Google the answer. It's something that was looked into, and some of you have done this exercise before, so I'm going to trust you not to give the answer. something that was investigated by looking at 101 startup failures, and the researchers doing their own post-mortem, which of course is biased. Of course it's subjective. Of course it's coming through the perceptual lenses, like any kind of study like this has to be. So we have to take it with a grain of salt, but it's still an interesting question. So some of the reasons that they gave: bad location is one possibility. Ran out of cash, didn't start with enough money, would have succeeded if we just had double the seed funding or whatever it might have been. No market need. Did people want the thing that we're making? Poor marketing. Maybe we had a good product, but we didn't sell it properly. Lack of passion, meaning, we didn't really, or some other elements related to execution. We just weren't charged up as much as this other startup. Or maybe we had a good idea, but we didn't price it right, above the market value, or too low to make a profit. These are some example reasons that startups could fail, and I'm going to ask you to, in your own opinion, what do you discuss this with your pair or a small group for a minute or so? Come up with the top one or maybe the top two out of all these things. I'm going to send it to you. Let's see how this works. I'll send it to you in the chat here, and I think I can send it to you when you're in the rooms also. Not 100% sure about that. But here they are. Here's an idea. Take this and copy it into your paste buffer. And then I'll try sending it. I think the new version of Zoom lets me send it to you when you're in your room. So I'm going to try doing that, but I'm not 100% sure I can reach you that way. And with your pair or your small group, I'd like you to come up with what you think is the main one, or maybe the top two from this list of reasons that startups fail, according to subjective analysis of it. And then I'll tell you the answer after that. But don't Google it, please. Chat. Okay, so I will create the breakouts again. Recreate different random groups. Co-hosts will not get grouped by this. And open the rooms. All right, once again, the request is, out of this list of things, what do you think the main reason or main top reasons for startups failing could be? Start 3-minute timer.
3 minutes. Counting down.
Should add that. 3 minutes. Broadcasting.
We have one unassigned person. Oh, okay. She's assigned. Oh, now we have another person. Damini's not assigned.
Is anyone alone?
Okay, that's it.
Make sure we don't have any. We have one person alone. I'll move that person into another room. Possibly some people don't want to do the interaction and drop off as soon as they.
It's possible.
It's useful to know.
We have a new one, Roshani. They need a room.
Hi, sorry, I got kicked out of my room.
You're kicking off.
Remember which room?
Sorry about that, Roshani.
No, I think it's my internet, my connection.
I'll put you in room 9, unless you remember which. Oh, you were room 2.
Yes.
Try this, room 2.
Actually, I know this is a trick question. My guess would be no market need. But that's too simple, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll give him a softball for the first activity. How do you spell which?
Are the rooms closing automatically?
Okay. Randy, everybody's assigned to a room. Oh, they're coming back now, right?
My timer.
Yeah, the room I was in ended, so
Okay. All right,
please let me
Randy.
back.
All right.
That's weird. I didn't close them yet. It hasn't been.
Well, if you put a timer on it, it might have expired on its own.
No, I didn't though. Hang on, we'll give them some time to come back.
Maybe that's something we should bring up to Zoom. When you close the rooms, they should all be back just like that.
There we go. 3 minutes. Close rooms.
Rooms are still going.
Okay.
Recording is being
Thanks.
All right. Hopefully everyone's back. And yeah, we need to move quickly. So ideas I'm going to introduce here. So I'm going to give you the answer, but not yet. And you may already have the answer. One person claimed the question was too easy. We'll see. I did this with a group of German automotive executives at different levels, and we won't mention the company. And it was amazing how many of them weren't aware of this way of thinking. And I think that being inside a company for so long, or the way Jerry Weinberg put it, is you get pickled. You might think you're there to change the company, and but he says that actually the cucumber gets pickled more than the brine gets cucumbered. And anyone who works like a coach, you've got some idea what I mean. Things that wouldn't seem right or normal, you start to become normal once you've been in there too long. There's a joke about the two fish swimming in the water, and they swim past the grandpa fish. Grandpa asks them, "How's the water, boys?" Fish keeps swimming for another few minutes. Finally, one of them asks the other, "What the hell is water?" And they don't know this because they're in it. They're so deep in the situation they're not able to perceive the distinction between that and something else. We'll introduce some ideas here from Lean Startup. We'll start with an example of not a Lean Startup, and that was in the late 1980s. People had this wonderful vision for a product, a phone that you can use anywhere in the world. And a consortium with Motorola and other companies spent $1 billion, $5 billion, working on this new technology. They launched 90 satellites into orbit, hugely expensive endeavor. And some of you know what the next page of this, next chapter of the story is. And while they were working on this, the target moved. While they were doing this, people got cell phones. Cell towers sprang up everywhere. And there turned out not to be a need for a phone that you can use in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or in Antarctica. No one needed a $2,000 phone that worked anywhere in the world. I mean, only a few uses for it. And so they went bankrupt. Iridium went bankrupt and sold at its low point, sold for $100 million. So how do you make $100 million? Start with $5 billion and a great idea. And convincing yourself that it's a great idea. So that would not be a lean startup. Another example would be in the West Coast here. I don't know if you had it over there, but we had a company called Webvan during the dot-com era, grocery delivery service. On the basis of what people said they would do, they spent nearly $1 billion on this grocery delivery service during the dot-com era. And even though people said they would use it in practice, the empirical, they didn't test this by experimentation. They just listened to customers. So be very careful about this also. Listening to customers, what they say they will do, is still not empirical feedback, still not enough to drive you. Well, now we'll take one of the purest examples of lean startup out there, and this was Zappos shoes. In the beginning, the early days of Zappos shoes, they had a hypothesis. Let's call this a value hypothesis, that people would find it useful to buy shoes online. But instead of spending $1 billion, buying trucks and all kinds of other stuff, they said, let's test our hypothesis. Let's find the cheapest way and most accurate way to test the value hypothesis, that people will find it useful to build shoes online. And some of you, especially if you've read Lean Startup, if you've read this book, you know what happens in the story. The cheapest and fastest and most accurate way they could think of to test that hypothesis was by actually putting shoes for sale online to see if people bought them, without even buying the shoes. They just took pictures of shoes, different kinds of shoes, put them online to see what their market was. Yeah, just to test the theory that people would buy shoes online. And then turns out, oh shit, people are buying shoes online. Now we have to fulfill these orders. So they had to go and pay retail prices to fulfill the orders. But they were willing to lose money in the beginning in order to test the hypothesis that there was even a market there. So that brings us to what the answer to our, at least this is according to the people who researched this. Who knows if they're, how biased or accurate the research is. But no market need was their main identified reason for the 101 startup failures that they analyzed. They said people are doing stuff that no one, put an idea, a hypothesis, but we fool ourselves into this. And then, of course, on capitalization was another topic. And all the other stuff that people talk about a lot. So I bet some of you got this right, or if you're involved with Agile, you probably had some sense that this is where the real market risks are. Just a little bit more about Lean Startup before I go into how to talk to people about it. We will call this a validated learning loop. And it's not only, Eric Ries is one of the people in his Lean Startup book, is one of the people who popularized this. But I need to understand, this is not only Eric Ries, even Kent Beck, founder, first name on the list of Agile Manifesto authors. And he said, working software over comprehensive documentation. But then we say, what software that does what? Maybe working software that no one needs is still probably not what we're about, not a good use for our very limited lifespan that we have. And so validated learning over working software. Validated learning, he means learning what users, customers really want to use or to buy, discovering what will give them the most value, and executing this validated learning loop with the minimum of self-deception, the minimum amount of, now there may be circumstances where this doesn't apply, but instead of, at least in some cases, maybe it's better to test that people actually want what we're doing, and then use whatever we're measuring to learn what to do next.
Thank you. Bye. I actually have a quick question for you guys, if you don't mind. This might be very interesting, but I do plan on moving to LA soon. Do you guys have?
I think that's off topic. All right, got that.
Mute that. Okay.
All right, and so a bit more about this. We're not going to go too deep into it because we want to move. But I'm going to encourage you, if you're involved with helping organizations adapt agility, Lean Startup is one of two books that changed the way I looked at it even after years of being in this. So I'm going to encourage you to read Eric Ries's book and start using the language he's using with your executives, with the people who are sponsoring your agile adoptions, so they can start to see how this is going to help them make money, or retain, or increase the value of the company, or allow the company to survive.
We have a hand up from Michael.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question, so looking at the market need, and I just want to look at, I know you said one of the early kind of failures was a grocery shopping app, right? And just looking at things changing, right? So people ordering stuff on their phone, much more comfortable with that, Amazon coming out, the pandemic and stuff, and clearly there's a market for it now. It's a pretty robust market of, grocery delivery, directly from the grocery chains or through, different services that deliver groceries. So I guess, when you say there's no market, would it also be not the correct market conditions that you would roll into there?
Or let me put this book suggestion on the board here. I heard Daniel Pink. Some of you have seen his other videos. Put it up here. Looked at these questions, and that's the right idea at the wrong time.
Right.
And timing is such, and so Daniel Pink looked at this and realized lots of endeavors would have been successful at a different time if they had the timing right for them. And it makes me think, like Iridium, if it had been 5 years, or if it had been available 5 years earlier, maybe they would have been successful with that. Yeah, so I don't know the answer, but I also think that one of the things we have to be sensitive to is it the right time for this idea? And I buy groceries online. It's especially, the past couple of years, it's been a godsend for us. Also remember the Apple Newton was a cool idea, and we're doing stuff like that now, but at the time, they also, other issues with that. Yeah, so I'm going to suggest that the timing, and this will bring us back to what to measure. So let's actually.
So actually, when we had this breakout room, what we were discussing was like one of the things which Agile provides you is your ability to pivot to changing market conditions.
Yes.
So if you keep your finger on the pulse of the market and you keep changing, so an idea which may be good right now may lose its value by the time you come out in the market with the product, or vice versa. You need to be in touch with the pulse of the market.
What Agile is supposed to do for us is give us the ability to measure the most important things. And when we measure, which are, I think, if we accept the hypothesis that market need is the main risk we're optimizing against would be, do people want to buy what we're doing? Or do people want to use? Not everything is a commercial product, but do people want to use what we're doing?
Correct.
And so this is why, and Dan Pink in particular warns you, watch out for, when you measure, people love to measure stuff. We've got these, my friend calls this left brain poisoning, where we want to measure all kinds of things. But what really matters, the thing that we want to measure and not get distracted from, is, are we doing something useful for people? And that will allow us to learn what to build next. That's an vast oversimplification of the idea of a validated learning loop. I'm sensitive for everyone's time, and so I want to move into the next part of the topic, which is how to talk to your executives about what's the reason, the purpose of an agile adoption. So this article is, and I'll send the link out here also, introduces the idea of a system optimization goal. I have to. Chat window, where is it? There it is. And this, coming back to in the opening when I said, Agile has been sold as a way to change everything. I mean, to make everything better. But make everything better is not a well thought out system optimization goal. And I think everyone knows that subconsciously, but we need to be explicit about it. And what would be the goal of an Agile adoption in the first place? Now, there are lots of reasons that people could have for doing it, but the only one that I'm good at helping with is increase an organization's ability to respond to change. That's kind of what the word Agile means. Now, originally they were going to use the word adaptive when they wrote the Agile Manifesto. Some of you know the history behind that. But this is a little bit too simple. Craig Larman will elaborate on that. And say what we're really interested in is the ability to change directions, turn on a dime for a dime. So do we need, if we're going to pivot, we're going to execute a pivot. Execute a pivot sort of implies killing people, right? If we're going to pivot, do we have to reorganize the whole company to do that? Is that something we can do without a, or have we created an organizational design that allows us to pivot merely by changing priorities in our one product backlog, our shared product backlog? Let's say we have one product in our company. In large-scale Scrum, by the way, that's actually in the Scrum Guide. Even if you have multiple teams working on the product, there's still only one product backlog. And it's because of this. It's because we want the ability to change directions. And then the other thing we need is the information to change directions. So this is going to be coming back to the measurement part of the validated learning loop. Can we discover what real users out in the real world are doing so that our organization can respond out to reality, what it is now, instead of our fantasy of what it is. So consider this as and this is a bit wordy, but consider this as a candidate for a system optimization goal. And this means the executives have got to be understand what they are going to be letting go of, and middle management, and eventually the rest of the organization. So my way of doing this, my preferred way of doing this, is called you can think of it as a informed consent discussion, an informed consent conference. And we would do this with a cross-section of the organization so that we are clear what are some of the painful aspects of a real Agile adoption. What are we going to have to let go of? And some of you know, because you've been doing, I think most of you have been exposed to, you have some ideas already what are some things you have to let go of. Probably there's going to be more flexibility about job titles and roles. Probably HR would need to be involved, at least with my the textbook example of an Agile adoption that worked. HR had to be involved because a lot of things, the policies that they were issuing were harmful to teamwork and to the people being adaptive as individuals. It implies changes to structure also. Now maybe we're not going to have this department that does this and this department, and we have to create safety for those departments. Once they're created, now there's department heads. Now there's all the structure that comes with that. People are scared. How do I fit into this new world? And what's my role going to be? One of the things that one of the ideas that we steal from the Toyota way is that everyone's got to have job security and salary safety. We want to create safety for your job, safety for your salary. You're not worrying about how you can feed your family, etc. But we're giving that in exchange for a role safety, meaning you might not be doing the same thing a month later than you're doing now. Your role, what your role had been, and then all that stuff the positional power that you've gotten for yourself may not be there. And how do we create the safety so that everyone understands that. And this is especially a concern with middle managers or people with fancy job titles like mine was software architect. You know, in the beginning of my career, I had this misconception that job security came from specialization. So these are some of the ideas that we're going to have to take on directly if we're serious about changing an organization. I hope that makes some sense. So informed consent discussion about, and we'll go into more details in a bit, but informed consent discussion first about what is the reason we're doing this, what is the reason for doing an agile adoption, what is our system optimization goal, in other words. What are we trying to improve our organization's ability to do? And I'll suggest if it's agility, then it's going to look something like this. Our ability to respond to change and react to uncertainty, use uncertainty to our competitive advantage, outlearn our competitors. A book that can help you with those ideas, if you're not familiar with it now, is The Fifth Discipline. Peter Senge, Fifth Discipline. All right, so make everything better, just make everything better. It doesn't work. And there's some examples here you can read about on your own time. Here's what I'm going to ask the top management to do. Part of what their role is in this is to express that clearly and over again to people. This is what we're trying to do. This is the reason for the change we're making. And not only that, but you have to put your money where your mouth is. In order to get this, we're willing to let go of something else. So what attachments are we willing to let go of? And these will be controversial. Some of them will be things that, we really liked, for the first 3 years our company was this way. But in order to gain this, does mean we've got to let go of something else. Otherwise, it's going to be harder than a camel passing through the eye of a needle. And of course, the right goal, there's no right goal, right system optimization goal. But these are some things that usually come up as things that people are trying to achieve. And let's talk about that let's put our Miro board up where we have them. Talk about whether you think some of these are consistent with adaptiveness and some are not. So here's our system optimization goal. Oh, I noticed some people did log into Miro here. Dozo. My daughter is. Should I show them your sign?
I don't mind.
Go eat. Yeah, go eat.
I'm not the one who's...
All right, it's okay. All right. We would do this as an exercise, as a class exercise normally, but this is a talk and we don't have the time. So let's just discuss some of them. These are things that will come up as either explicitly or implicitly as things that people are looking for out of a Scrum adoption. The order was one that I remember a place I worked with a couple of years ago. This was what was driving. They had their upper middle management layer person who's just like, well, who's supposed to do what? When is this supposed to happen? We're used to having this, and I'm scared when I don't have that. So need for order. And in some ways, I can see how some aspects of an agile adoption might increase order. For example, one of the things, so some things we have a sense of order about. We're doing for example, if we're going to do Scrum, then we have order is imposed by the idea of a 2-week time box, by we're always having these ceremonies, these rituals at these times. We're going to see the product demonstrated every Friday or every other Friday, whatever it might be. And we know who's on which team, etc. So in some aspects of chaos could be reduced. But I have to understand the reason we're doing that is to increase our ability to react to changes that come from without. And so is order, depending how we look at it, which column would you put it in? It would be increased or decreased if we are going to optimize for adaptiveness, meaning the ability to recognize and discover what the market needs are, and then change what we're doing based on what we learn. And so Maybe it's it depends, or maybe it's inconsistent, or maybe you can find ways that it's consistent. Predictability is another one of these categories. Well, 100% predictability means 0% adaptiveness. So what do we mean by predictability? And we want to drill down further on that. One that we mentioned before was employee satisfaction. So we would list these things out in this conversation. And if you are familiar with systems modeling, if you've drawn a causal loop diagram, then you can do it that way. Or you can just have people stand up at a whiteboard and start writing down some of these things and connecting them to each other. An agile adoption, what's it going to do to job satisfaction of, say, the people, level 1 contributors, or whatever you call it, individual contributors? What's it going to do to the direct managers, department heads? And what can we do to mitigate any concerns? Like if we have secondary concerns, are there secondary means we can use to alleviate the concerns that people would have about that? And I think you should have this discussion, this informed consent discussion, with your execs and a cross section and different layers of management down to at least some representatives of the developers or the line workers in the beginning, and get clarity about what that optimization goal is, what you're willing to let go of, be willing to say it over and over again, and recognize when contradictions come up to those things, to those goals. Customer satisfaction, we might see that as consistent with adaptiveness to customer needs in most cases. But you can see someone saying, well, we have a lot of users of our old product, the one we're trying to end of life, and they're going to be upset if we don't constantly stay in bug hotfix hell fixing their problems. So we want to talk about that during informed consent discussion. Does it affect our top line revenue at the expense of our bottom line? Another related question is, are we optimizing? A lot of companies are optimizing for cost per developer. So a programmer in New York or New Jersey or something costs, I don't even know what an engineer would cost over there. I'm sure it's some god-awful number compared to someone who's in a different time zone from us, and it's way cheaper. So cost per developer might be way cheaper if we get all these people far away from us. But does that actually reduce our development cost? So, and there's, I think, until we just, by the development cost, I mean the total cost of ownership of what we're doing. Yeah, maybe sometimes, but often we're often short-sighted in that. We're not really thinking about what would have to happen for that to become true. All right, so these are example things that I hope you would raise, and you'll have access to this Miro board afterwards if you want it. These are things I hope you would raise. Actually, they're also in the article that I sent during your conversation with your execs about what was the goal of this agile adoption? What are we willing to let go of? And I hoped, one of the things I wanted to get to was what management's role could be, and we have 6 minutes, so I'm going to try anyway. So these are variables. How is success measured in your organization? This came from a survey from a tool company back a long, long time ago. These were a list of things, and they asked them, how is success measured on a day-to-day basis in your organization? The answer to the survey was shocking to a lot of people. Now, based on in the first exercise we did, where we're looking at what is the risk, the main risk that we're, or the primary thing we're trying to deal with if in our change to the organization was that no market need as our, and how do we optimize to improve market need? So you'd think something like product utilization would be very high, very useful thing to measure, something to optimize for measuring for success. And you'd think an intermediate measurement like velocity would be low. That's what you would hope if people understood what agility was for. But in the survey, it was the opposite of that. You could almost turn this upside down if you wanted the right answer. Yeah, well, it turned out people were measuring things that are what Eric Ries would call vanity metrics. And things that actually matter, like user satisfaction is way down here, product utilization was, I think, at the bottom almost. Seems like we have things a little bit backwards here. That was kind of a shock. As you may have heard me say before, you can, and if you don't know why, get the comic book that Bob Phillips mentioned earlier, why optimizing for velocity is probably a local optimization that's going to bite us in the long run. Not always, but in practice, it turns out to be the case. For potentially useful indicators could be customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, because it seems to be correlated. The rate that we can release the product, so how long between we have an idea when it's producing value for people in the field, and the rate of defects. This would be a clue that we don't have a effective development process if we're producing lots of bugs. The role of management. Okay, I have a story to tell. Just a real short. Agile adoption place I worked with, it took them, I'd say the first year was bad, and so in the second year things started to look good, and then by the third year they released the product with less bugs than anyone had ever seen before. But it took 3 years to get there, and there was pain along the way. But finally they got themselves out of the hot fix hell. And some of the things that they had to do a team self-design workshop. I'll send you a link to the video about that because we'll run out of time. They had to change the way their product backlog, they had just a bunch of tasks instead of user-centric features. Other structural and policy changes that they had to make in order to get an effective adoption of agility. These are things we've got to let our management know about. Now, what is our executives? The role of management, the way we see it in large-scale Scrum, the role of management changes from managing the day-to-day work that people are doing, because those become team responsibilities if we have cross-functional self-organizing teams in a Scrum adoption, for instance. The role of management is more meta now, which is why I depicted them and the Scrum Masters as ghosts in the comic book here. They're on a different plane. They're there to affect the policies and the structure, and to teach other people to start developing a whole product view, developing a big picture perspective of the whole product. According to unless we have this statement, managers are optional, but if they exist, and I can only think of one organization that's doing large-scale Scrum, has about 160 people with the senior executive that's a product owner, and the rest is self-managing teams. But nearly every other organization I've seen has got management. They have them. And I haven't seen any place with more than 150 people that doesn't have management. So it exists. We know it's and we want management to understand what they can do to help. Their role's likely to change, and instead of doing the day-to-day work, the micromanagement, it is to look at the big picture. Practice Go-See, which is Gensei Genbutsu, be on the shop floor, actually seeing what's happening with the work, learning from the work. And I have an example of that in this video, which I'm going to share the link to this video.
If teams are self-managed,
because we don't have time in the session, but I'm going to put this in the chat here.
Michael, it looks like you're using that mural board for a lot of everything that everybody saw. And so if they go to that board, they could pretty much.
Yeah, everything, that is right. So I don't know if I'm trying to, I don't know if I didn't want to force people to use Miro, but everything that I showed is here in this Miro board, which I sent the link to. I'll share again in case we have any late comers or people got disconnected. Copy link.
And I know we're at the top of the hour. So is there anything you want to
Yeah, it's
say
too
in?
big a topic for the time again.
Yeah. I'm looking at that board. I'm like, that's gold. There's so many cool things there that you could use and
Yeah.
to help with the conversations.
So I didn't feel like I got a chance to explain a lot of it as well as I'd like, but I'm not hard to reach.
All right.
And
So
I provided some additional resources for people who want to learn more about some of the things I talked about.
all right. So let me share my screen. And again, I'd like to thank Michael for actually giving his time and participating tonight. Hopefully everybody sees all that cool value that I like. Wow, I can't wait to start really looking at that board in much more detail. But thank you, Michael, for sharing your expertise with us.
Should we do some? So I hope I managed to hit some of your questions or concerns. My successful, main one that I worked with, the one that I'm most proud of, senior vice president was involved from the get-go, and not just supporting the adoption, but leading it, understanding the reasons behind it, and coming in willing to contradict the policies that had been in place before, even including policies that he had established himself. And I do think you got to have those conversations, and I hope that some of the resources I've given you will allow you to be able to speak to the concerns that they'll have.
And you said you were easily reachable.
According to my daughter, she doesn't need any permission at all.
Is it okay if people email you? I guess.
Yeah, sure. MJ I'll put this in here. Oh, also we have a class about large-scale Scrum. I'll give it. A large-scale Scrum is a multiple team approach specifically for software and hardware development. So this question came up last time. It's not designed to do everything. It's organized around software and hardware development when we have multiple teams in an organization that's a real organization. And it does involve, as you may guess, it involves changes to structure and policy. We spend quite a bit of time going through those things in detail in our workshop about that.
Is that part of the class that you're going to be doing for our chapter?
Yeah, that's
all right. So, again, thank you, Michael, and basically.